The February wind cut through the Oakland cemetery like frozen knives as Sarah Mitchell stood beside her father's open grave. At 8 months pregnant, her swollen belly pressed against the thin fabric of her only black dress, a cheap polyester thing she'd owned since college. Her father's casket was being lowered into the frozen ground, the mechanical whir of the pulley system cutting through the priest's final prayers. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her rounded stomach, feeling her daughter kick as if sensing her mother's distress. Behind her, she could hear her husband Marcus shifting his weight, checking his phone. Again. She'd noticed it during the entire service. His attention anywhere but on her grief, his jaw tight with what she'd mistaken for shared sorrow, but now recognized as impatience. They'd met 6 years ago at a charity fundraiser, where Marcus was networking for his marketing firm. Sarah had been there representing the small nonprofit where she worked, wearing a borrowed dress and feeling out of place among the city's elite. Marcus had approached her with that confident smile, made her feel like she was the only person in the room. Within a year, they were married. Within 5, she was pregnant and watching her father die of cancer. Now, 3 days after her father had taken his last breath, everything had changed. The priest finished his blessing. Sarah stepped forward to throw the first handful of dirt onto the mahogany casket, the frozen earth hitting the wood with a hollow thud that seemed to echo in her chest. Tears streamed down her face, freezing on her cheeks in the bitter cold. She whispered goodbye to the man who'd raised her alone after her mother died, who'd worked 2 jobs to put her through college, who'd been so excited about becoming a grandfather. She felt Marcus's hand on her shoulder. Finally, she thought. Finally. Some comfort. Sarah, we need to talk. His voice was cold, distant. She turned to look at him, confused by his tone at her father's graveside. Marcus was 33, conventionally handsome in his tailored black suit that cost more than her monthly salary. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the wind. His expression was completely neutral. "Now?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Marcus, there's still... The burial isn't even... Now," he said firmly, pulling a manila envelope from inside his coat. Sarah stared at the envelope, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Around them, the small gathering of mourners, her father's co-workers, a few neighbors, his hospice nurse, began to shift uncomfortably. Someone coughed. The priest paused, his prayer book lowering slightly. Marcus opened the envelope and pulled out a thick stack of papers. He held them out to her without ceremony, without softness, without any acknowledgement that they were standing at her father's grave, while dirt was still being shoveled onto his casket. "Divorce papers," Marcus said flatly. "I need you to sign them." The words didn't make sense. Sarah looked from the papers to Marcus's face, searching for some sign that this was a nightmare, that grief had fractured her reality. But his expression remained cold, his eyes avoiding hers. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I'm filing for divorce. I've already moved out most of my things. I need you to sign these today." Sarah's hands went to her belly instinctively, protectively. "Marcus, I'm 8 months pregnant. With your daughter. My father just died. What are you? This can't be happening. It's happening." He thrust the papers at her again. "Sign them now, Sarah. We're done." "But why?" "What did I..." "Look at yourself," Marcus said, his voice sharp with contempt. "You've let yourself go completely. You're fat, you're always crying, you're obsessed with your father's death. I can't do this anymore. I won't spend the rest of my life trapped in a loveless marriage with someone who makes me feel dead inside." Each word hit like a physical blow. Sarah's vision blurred with fresh tears, Her father's casket was being covered with earth now, shovel after shovel, while her husband dismantled her life at the graveside. "Marcus, please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "The baby, our daughter. She's due in 4 weeks. How can you out? The baby will be fine. You'll be fine. We both need to move on." That's when Sarah heard the footsteps behind Marcus, high heels clicking on the frozen pathway. She looked past her husband and saw a woman approaching, younger than Sarah, maybe 27, with glossy dark hair and flawless makeup. She was wearing a designer coat that Sarah recognized from a magazine, probably worth thousands of dollars. The woman's smile was sharp as she slipped her arm through Marcus's. "Hi, Sarah," the woman said brightly, as if they were meeting for coffee instead of at a funeral. "I'm Danielle. I work with Marcus at the firm." Sarah stared, her mind unable to process this new horror. "You brought her here? To my father's funeral?" "Danielle and I have been together for 8 months, Marcus said, his arm sliding around Danielle's waist possessively. "She understands me in ways you never could. She makes me feel alive again." 8 months. Sarah did the math through her fog of grief and shock. She was 8 months pregnant. He'd started the affair right when they'd found out about the baby, right when her father's cancer had come back. "You're making a scene," Danielle said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "People are staring. Maybe you should just sign the papers so we can all move on with our lives." Sarah looked around. The mourners were frozen in place, horror written on their faces. The priest had stopped mid-prayer. Even the grave diggers had paused, their shovels hanging in the air. Her father was being buried 10 feet away, and her husband was serving her divorce papers while his mistress smirked at her pregnant body. "I'm not signing anything," Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Not here. Not like this." Marcus's expression hardened. "Then you're going to make this difficult?" "Fine." He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it to show her. It was their joint bank account. The balance read, "Sirdone. I emptied it this morning," Marcus said calmly. "That's 18,000, my money, from my job. You never contributed anything real to our household income anyway." Sarah's breath caught. That money was supposed to cover the hospital bills for the birth, the first month's rent if they needed to move, diapers, formula, everything. "You can't just..." "That's illegal. That's our money." "Prove it," Marcus said with a shrug. "You'll find that the house is in my name. The car is in my name. The credit cards are in my name. You have nothing, Sarah. You are nothing." Danielle leaned into Marcus, resting her perfectly manicured hand on his chest. "Baby, let's go. We have that venue appointment at 3. We need to finalize our own wedding plans." "Wedding?" Sarah's voice cracked. "In 6 weeks," Danielle said sweetly, "at the Riverside Plaza. It's going to be beautiful. 200 guests, live band, champagne fountain. Everything you were too boring to appreciate, Sarah." Marcus pulled out a set of car keys, Sarah's car keys, and pocketed them. "The car's in my name, too. You can take an Uber home, or walk. I don't really care." "Marcus, please," Sarah begged, hating herself for it but unable to stop. "The baby needs diapers, formula. I have nothing. You can't just leave me with nothing." "That's not my problem anymore." He turned to walk away, Danielle attached to his side. Sarah reached out, grabbing his arm. "At least leave me something for the baby. Please. She's your daughter." Marcus jerked his arm away roughly, causing Sarah to stumble. At 8 months pregnant, her balance was precarious. She caught herself against a nearby headstone, her hand scraping against the cold marble. Danielle laughed, actually laughed. "Oh my God, she's pathetic." "Marcus, How did you stand this for 6 years? Marcus paused, turning back one more time. His eyes were completely cold, like looking at a stranger. You have 30 minutes to get your things out of the house. After that, I'm changing the locks. If you're still there, I'm calling the police for trespassing. 30 minutes? Marcus, I'm 8 months pregnant. I can barely walk. Where am I supposed to go? That's your problem to solve. I suggest you figure it out quickly. The temperature is dropping, and it's supposed to snow tonight. He checked his watch, a new Rolex that Sarah had never seen before. Your time starts now. He walked away with Danielle giggling against his shoulder. Sarah watched them get into Marcus's BMW, the car they'd bought together, the car he'd insisted they needed for the baby, and drive away from the cemetery, leaving her standing at her father's grave with divorce papers in her shaking hands and no way to get home. The priest approached cautiously. Mrs. Mitchell, I am so sorry. I've never seen anything like that in 30 years. Do you need help? Can I call someone? Sarah looked down at the divorce papers, then at her father's grave. Fresh earth covered the casket now. He was gone. Really, truly gone. And she had no one else. Her mother had died when she was 12. She was an only child. Her father had been her only family. I need to get home, she whispered. I have 30 minutes. I can drive you, the hospice nurse said, stepping forward. Her name was Helen, and she'd been with Sarah's father during his final days. My car is right here. Come on, honey. The drive to the house, Marcus's house, apparently, took 12 minutes. Sarah's phone rang halfway there. It was Marcus. One more thing, he said without preamble. Your phone plan? That's in my name too. Consider this your final call on my dime. The line went dead. When Sarah tried to call back, the phone showed no service. Helen pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as it had that morning when Marcus had driven her to the funeral. A modest, 2-story colonial in a nice neighborhood. They'd bought it 3 years ago, back when Sarah still believed they were building a life together. Inside, Sarah moved through the rooms, in a daze. 30 minutes. Marcus had said 30 minutes. She grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing in clothes. Maternity jeans, soft shirts, her father's old cardigan that still smelled like him. Her hands shook so badly she could barely grip the fabric. The nursery door was open. Sarah stood in the doorway, staring at the crib they'd assembled together, the pale yellow walls she'd painted, the mobile of clouds and stars hanging above the changing table. How many times had she stood here, imagining bringing their daughter home, imagining Marcus holding the baby, being a family. Her phone buzzed. A text message, the last one she'd receive. It was from an unknown number, but the message made it clear who'd sent it. The message read, Thanks for the wedding fund, fatty. Enjoy the streets. Attached was a photo of Marcus and Danielle, kissing. Danielle's left hand prominently displayed to show off an enormous diamond engagement ring. In the background, Sarah could see the Riverside Plaza venue, its elegant facade gleaming in the winter sunlight. Sarah sank to the floor of the nursery, her back against the wall, and let herself break. Sobs racked her body, her hand pressed against her belly where her daughter kicked frantically, responding to her mother's distress. She cried for her father, gone forever. She cried for her marriage, revealed as a lie. She cried for the life she'd thought she was building, demolished in a single afternoon at a graveside. Helen appeared in the doorway. Honey, we need to go. It's been 28 minutes. Sarah let Helen help her up. They grabbed the duffel bag and left the house. As they pulled away, Sarah saw Marcus's BMW turning onto the street. Right on time. The temperature was dropping fast. The forecast called for snow, Heavy snow, starting tonight and continuing through the weekend. Helen drove Sarah to a women's shelter on the edge of the city, a place Sarah had donated to in the past, but never imagined she'd need herself. "You'll be safe here," Helen said gently. "They have beds, hot meals, resources. And Sarah? Men like him always get what's coming to them. I've seen it 100 times in my career. Just hold on." Sarah checked into the shelter with nothing but her duffel bag and her dead phone. The intake counselor, a kind woman named Maria, showed her to a small room with 2 cots and a shared bathroom down the hall. The fluorescent lights were harsh, but the room was warm. And right now, that was enough. That night, Sarah lay on the thin mattress, her hand on her belly, and stared at the ceiling. Her daughter kicked steadily, a reminder that she had to keep going, had to survive this, had to find a way forward. She didn't know yet about the letter. It was in her duffel bag, tucked into the pocket of her father's cardigan. She'd grabbed it without thinking when she'd packed, seeking comfort in the familiar smell of his cologne. The letter was in a sealed envelope, cream-colored paper, with her name written in her father's careful handwriting. She wouldn't find it until the next morning. And when she did, everything would change. The shelter provided breakfast at 7, scrambled eggs, toast, weak coffee. Sarah sat at one of the long tables, her pregnant belly pressed against the edge, and picked at her food. Around her, other women talked quietly. Some were there with children. Most looked as exhausted as Sarah felt. After breakfast, she returned to her room, thinking about what came next. She needed to find a lawyer, though she had no idea how she'd pay for one. She needed to figure out prenatal care, since her doctor's office was surely on Marcus's insurance plan, which he'd probably already canceled. She needed... Her hand brushed against the cardigan draped over the back of the room's single chair. She picked it up, pressing the fabric to her face, breathing in the fading scent of her father. That's when she felt the envelope in the pocket. Sarah pulled it out, confused. Her name was written on the front in her father's handwriting, but the paper felt thick, expensive. Not like the simple notepad he'd kept by his bed in hospice. With shaking fingers, she opened it. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And based on when you're reading it, I pray you never needed this letter. But I know Marcus. I've watched him for 6 years, seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching, seen the contempt he tries to hide. I hoped I was wrong. I prayed I was wrong. But I prepared for the worst. In safe deposit box 847 at First National Bank downtown, you'll find documents that will change everything. Key is taped to the back of this letter. The box is in your name, has been for 15 years, since you turned 18. Inside, you'll find the truth about your inheritance. I'm not who you thought I was, Sarah. My real name is Thomas Richardson. Thomas Mitchell was the name I took when I left my old life behind. When your mother died, I walked away from everything. My family's company, the fortune, the life of wealth and power. I couldn't bear it without her. So I became someone else, someone simple. Someone who could focus on being your father without the weight of empire crushing us. But I never stopped managing the assets, never stopped growing the investments, never stopped building something that would protect you when I was gone. The box contains details on a fortune worth approximately $2 billion. Real estate, investments, corporate holdings, offshore accounts, 30 years of careful, deliberate growth. There's also a letter of introduction to your attorney, James Morrison. He's managed my affairs for 20 years and knows everything. He's been instructed to help you with whatever you need. Sarah, people reveal their true nature when they think you're powerless. Marcus is showing you exactly who he is. Believe him. Now use what I've given you to rise above him. Trust no one until they've earned it. Protect yourself and my granddaughter. Remember, patience is the greatest weapon you'll ever have. Show him, show all of them, what a Richardson woman is made of. I love you more than life itself. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to meet your daughter. Tell her about me. Tell her about her grandmother. Tell her she comes from a line of strong women who don't break. We wait, we watch, and we win. All my love. Dad. Sarah read the letter 3 times, certain she was hallucinating. Her father, Thomas Richardson? The Richardson family had been in the news years ago, something about a fortune, a tragedy, a billionaire who'd vanished from public life. But that had been in the 90s, before Sarah was born or when she was very young. She'd never connected it to her modest, hard-working father who'd driven a 15-year-old Honda and clipped coupons religiously. She peeled the tape off the back of the letter. A small silver key fell into her palm, stamped with the number 847. Her hands shook as she pulled out her dead phone, then remembered. No service. No way to call anyone. She went to find Maria, the intake counselor. I need to make a phone call, Sarah said. It's urgent. About my father's estate. Maria led her to an office with a landline. Sarah dialed First National Bank, asking for the safe deposit box department. I need to access box 847, she told the representative. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I believe my father recently passed away. The box is in my name. There was typing on the other end. Yes, Ms. Mitchell. We were expecting you. The box was set up by Thomas Richardson with explicit instructions that you could access it at any time. We're open until 5 today. Will you be coming in? I'll be there in an hour. Sarah borrowed bus fare from the shelter's emergency fund, promising to repay it. The ride downtown felt surreal, like she was floating outside her body. Pregnant, homeless, broke, and apparently the heir to a billion-dollar fortune. None of it made sense. First National Bank was a gleaming tower of steel and glass in the heart of the financial district. Sarah walked through the marble lobby in her cheap black funeral dress and worn coat, feeling every eye on her swollen belly and disheveled appearance. She probably looked like she was there to rob the place, not access a safe deposit box. But when she gave her name at the desk, everything changed. The manager himself appeared, a distinguished man in his 60s with steel-gray hair and a kind smile. Ms. Mitchell, he said warmly, we've been waiting for you. Please come with me. He led her to a private room deep in the bank's vault, brought her water and tissues, and left her alone with box 847. Sarah inserted the key with trembling hands. The lock clicked. She lifted the lid. Inside were folders. So many folders. Organized with tabs, real estate holdings, investment portfolio, corporate assets, trust structures, legal documents, contact information. She opened the real estate folder first. Property deeds scrolled past her eyes. Commercial buildings in Atlanta, office complexes in Charlotte, luxury apartments in Miami, a mixed-use development in Austin, hotel properties in Nashville. Each property was valued, and the numbers made her dizzy. 50 million here, 80 million there. Added together, the real estate alone was worth over $600 million. The investment portfolio was thicker. Pages and pages of stock holdings, bonds, private equity positions. She saw tech companies she recognized, blue-chip stocks, municipal bonds, offshore accounts in the Caymans. Her father, Thomas Richardson, had owned 12% of a social media company that had gone public 3 years ago, tripling his initial investment. That stake alone was worth $200 million. There were companies she didn't recognize. Richardson Medical Group, Richardson Properties, LLC, Richardson Capital Partners. Her hands froze when she saw one particular entry: Riverside Development Corporation. The company owned multiple properties, but one jumped out: the Riverside Plaza, the venue where Marcus and Danielle were planning their wedding. Her father owned the building, which meant now she owned it. Sarah set that folder aside carefully and opened the next one: corporate assets. Here she found controlling shares in several companies, including, her breath caught, Mitchell Marketing Solutions, Marcus's firm. Her father owned 40% of the company, a minority stake, but significant enough that losing the business relationship could cripple the firm. The next folder contained a letter of introduction to James Morrison, attorney at law, along with his contact information and a note. James has full details on all assets and is authorized to act on your behalf in any capacity. Trust him completely, Dad. At the bottom of the box, under all the folders, was a leather-bound journal. Sarah opened it, recognizing her father's handwriting on the first page. For Sarah. If you're reading this journal, you've found the truth. Let me tell you the whole story. I met your mother in 1992. I was Thomas Richardson, heir to Richardson Industries, worth $800 million even then. She was Emily Chen, a grad student working part-time at a bookstore. We fell in love in 3 weeks. We were married in 6 months. My family hated her, said she was beneath me, a gold digger. All the ugly things wealthy families say when their heirs marry for love instead of strategy. We had you in 1995. Your mother was so happy. I'd never seen anyone more excited to be a parent. Then when you were 6 months old, there was an accident. A car accident. The police said it was just bad luck, black ice, poor visibility, but I never believed it. My family had too much to gain from Emily's death. Too many reasons to want the embarrassing marriage to end. I couldn't prove anything. But I also couldn't stay. Couldn't raise you in that world, surrounded by people who might have killed your mother. So I walked away from everything. Changed my name. Took you and disappeared. I told them they could keep Richardson Industries. I wanted nothing to do with the family or the company. But I kept my personal fortune. The investments I'd made separately, the properties I'd bought, the assets that were mine alone. And I kept growing them, quietly, carefully, over the next 3 decades. I became Thomas Mitchell. Got a job as a bookkeeper, raised you in a modest home, drove an old car, clipped coupons, lived simply. But every night after you went to bed, I worked, analyzed markets, made investments, built an empire in the shadows. Not for me, for you, because I knew one day you'd need it. The world is cruel to women, Sarah. It's even crueler to women who trust the wrong men. I hoped Marcus would prove me wrong. I prayed he'd love you the way you deserved. But I prepared for the worst. Everything in this box is yours. Everything I built is to protect you. Use it wisely. Use it strategically. And remember, the best protection is being underestimated. Let them think you're small. Let them think you're broken. Then show them exactly what a Richardson woman can do. I love you, Dad. Sarah sat in that cold bank vault for 3 hours, reading through her father's journal, learning about the life he'd hidden from her. He wrote about specific investments, explaining his reasoning. He wrote about watching her grow up, proud of every accomplishment. He wrote about his concerns about Marcus, dating back to the beginning of their relationship. Marcus is a man who values status above substance, one entry read. He sees you as a trophy, not a partner. When you stop reflecting well on him, when you're no longer an asset to his image, he'll discard you. I hope I'm wrong. But I'm preparing for the reality I fear. Another entry dated 6 months ago. The pregnancy has changed Marcus. He's pulling away. I see it when he visits. The way he barely looks at Sarah, the way he checks his phone constantly, the way he tenses when she reaches for him. Something is wrong. I've asked James to quietly investigate. The final entry was dated 1 week before her father's death. James confirmed it. Marcus has been having an affair for 7 months with a woman named Danielle Harper. She works at his firm. James has photographs, text messages, proof of hotel stays. I'm dying, and I can't protect Sarah myself anymore. But I've left her everything she needs to protect herself. Marcus will regret underestimating her. They all will. At the very back of the journal was a folder labeled Justice Protocol. Inside, Sarah found step-by-step strategies for different scenarios. If he files for divorce while you're pregnant. If he tries to take the baby. If his family gets involved. If he empties your accounts. If he serves papers at a vulnerable moment. Her father had anticipated everything. The protocol included contact information for private investigators, divorce attorneys specializing in high net worth cases, financial advisors, and even a crisis management firm. There were templates for legal filings, strategies for asset protection, advice for public positioning. Don't react emotionally, her father had written. React strategically. Take your time. Learn everything about your position. Then act from a place of complete power. Remember, the best revenge isn't emotional. It's showing them the truth at the perfect moment. Sarah closed the journal and looked at her reflection in the stainless steel wall of the vault. She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, grieving, wearing a cheap funeral dress. Her hair was a mess. Her face was puffy from crying. She looked exactly how Marcus saw her. Powerless, pathetic, someone to be discarded. Perfect. She gathered all the folders, placed them carefully in her father's old briefcase that had been in the safe deposit box, and left the vault. The bank manager was waiting. Ms. Mitchell, I've been instructed by Mr. Morrison to tell you that he's available to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Would you like me to call his office? Yes, please. 20 minutes later, Sarah was in a taxi heading to Morrison and Associates, a law firm that occupied the 40th floor of the Hancock Tower. She'd never been to a law office before. The elevator ride up was smooth and silent, the kind of elevator that costs more than most cars. The reception area was all glass and polished wood, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Sarah approached the desk in her worn coat and cheap dress, briefcase in hand. Sarah Mitchell to see James Morrison. He's expecting me. The receptionist's professional smile never wavered, though her eyes took in Sarah's appearance. Of course, please have a seat. Would you like some water? Tea? Water would be good, thank you. 5 minutes later, a tall man in his 60s emerged from a corner office. His silver hair was immaculately styled, his suit clearly bespoke, his eyes sharp and assessing. But when he saw Sarah, his expression softened into something almost paternal. Sarah, he said, his voice warm. I'm James Morrison. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father was one of the most brilliant clients I've ever had. And more importantly, he was a good man. He shook her hand gently, mindful of her pregnancy, and led her into his office. If the reception area had been impressive, this was overwhelming. The entire wall facing the city was glass. The furniture was elegant without being ostentatious. Original art hung on the walls. Everything about the space communicated power and competence. Please, sit, James said, gesturing to a leather chair positioned so Sarah wouldn't have to look directly into the bright windows. He'd anticipated that she might be exhausted, that the light might be harsh. Details mattered here. He sat across from her, his expression serious. I assume you've been to the bank? You've read Thomas's letters and journal? Yes. Sarah's voice was steadier than she expected. Then you know the broad strokes. Let me give you the specifics. James opened a folder on his desk. Your father's estate is valued at approximately $2.1 billion as of this morning's market close. That includes real estate holdings of $623 million, investment portfolios worth $847 million, controlling or significant shares in 17 companies totaling $486 million, and liquid assets of $144 million. The numbers were so large they lost meaning. Sarah just nodded. The estate is structured to protect you completely, James continued. Everything is in trusts that Marcus has no claim to whatsoever. The prenuptial agreement you signed, at Marcus's family's insistence, ironically, actually works in your favor. It waives all rights to marital assets on both sides, which means he can't touch a penny of your inheritance. He drained our joint account, Sarah said. $18,000. James made a note. We'll recover that, with damages. He also served you divorce papers at your father's funeral, I understand? At the graveside, while my father was being buried. His mistress was there too. She spit. Sarah's voice cracked. She took a breath. She said cruel things. James's expression hardened. Danielle Harper, age 27, junior associate at Mitchell Marketing Solutions. Your father had her investigated 6 months ago when he suspected the affair. We have evidence documenting the relationship going back 9 months, which means it started right when you announced your pregnancy. He opened another folder and slid photographs across the desk. Sarah didn't want to look, but she forced herself. Marcus and Danielle at restaurants, entering hotels together, kissing in parking garages. Each photo was time-stamped and dated. Your father was thorough, James said. He wanted you to have undeniable evidence when the time came. He also had us investigate Marcus's family, particularly his mother, Linda Spencer. Another folder opened. Bank records this time. 3 weeks before your father's funeral, Linda Spencer transferred $15,000 to Danielle Harper with the memo, "Wedding Assistance." We have emails between Linda and Marcus discussing the divorce, pressure tactics, timing strategies. Your mother-in-law orchestrated this, Sarah. She paid the mistress and pushed her son to leave you at your most vulnerable moment. Sarah stared at the bank statement, at her mother-in-law's name in the sender field. Linda, who'd been so cold to her from the beginning. Linda who'd insisted on the prenup. Linda who'd always made subtle comments about Sarah's clothes, her job, her background. What do I do now? Sarah asked. That depends on what you want, James said. I can file a counterclaim to the divorce that will drag Marcus through every indignity he's put you through. I can sue for the stolen funds with punitive damages. I can destroy his career. You own 40% of his firm through your father's holdings, and we can make that very uncomfortable for him. We can expose the affair, the family conspiracy, all of it. Or, James smiled slightly, or we can be strategic. Your father believed in patience, Sarah. He believed in letting people reveal themselves completely before acting. If we strike now, we get immediate satisfaction but limited long-term impact. If we wait, if we let Marcus think he's won, if we let him make more mistakes and dig himself deeper, then when we act, the impact is total. Sarah thought about her father's journal. The best revenge isn't emotional. It's showing them the truth at the perfect moment. I want to wait, she said. I want to be strategic. James nodded approvingly. Then here's what I propose. First, we focus on your immediate needs. You're 8 months pregnant and living in a shelter. which is unacceptable. We set you up in secure, comfortable housing. We get you prenatal care. We ensure you and the baby are safe and healthy. I can't afford... Sarah, you're worth $2.1 billion. You can afford anything. James's voice was gentle but firm. That's going to take some time to sink in, I know. But starting right now, your life is different. We'll set you up with a monthly living stipend from the trust. Something modest for now, say $50,000 a month, so we don't draw attention. $50,000 a month. Modest. Second, James continued, we begin the transformation. You focus on your health, your pregnancy, your recovery from the trauma Marcus has put you through. We don't engage with his divorce filing immediately. We let him think you're struggling, overwhelmed, unable to respond. Let him feel powerful. And then, once you've had the baby and recovered, we begin strategic positioning, charitable appearances, high society events. We let you emerge slowly, transformed, in spaces where Marcus and his family will hear about it. We activate your father's foundation. $50 million is already allocated for women's shelters and children's hospitals. We make you visible in all the right ways. He's getting married in 6 weeks, Sarah said. At the Riverside Plaza. James's smile widened. The venue you own. Yes, I noticed that. How would you feel about attending that wedding, Sarah? The question hung in the air. Sarah thought about Marcus at the graveside, papers in hand. Danielle laughing at her. The text message. Thanks for the wedding fund, Fatty. Enjoy the streets. I'd very much like to attend that wedding, Sarah said quietly. Then we have 6 weeks to prepare, James said. 6 weeks for you to have your baby, recover, and transform. 6 weeks for Marcus to feel secure in his new life. 6 weeks for them to dig the hole as deep as possible. He stood, walking to the window. Your father spent 3 decades building you a weapon, Sarah. Let's use it precisely. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. James arranged for Sarah to move into a furnished corporate apartment in a secure building downtown, modest by billionaire standards, but to Sarah it felt like a palace. 2 bedrooms, a modern kitchen, floor-to-ceiling windows with city views. A doorman who screened all visitors. Safety. Dr. Patricia Chen became Sarah's new obstetrician, recommended by James for her discretion and expertise with high-risk pregnancies. Given Sarah's recent trauma and stress levels, the pregnancy now qualified as high risk. Dr. Chen was kind but firm, insisting on twice-weekly checkups and strict rest protocols. Your baby is fine right now, Dr. Chen said after the first ultrasound in her downtown practice. But stress affects fetal development. You need to focus on staying calm, staying healthy. Let your legal team handle everything else. Sarah tried. But at night, lying in her new bed in her new apartment, her hand on her belly, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, about Danielle, about the moment at her father's grave. Patience, she reminded herself, reading her father's journal every night. The Richardson women don't break. We wait, we watch, and we win. 3 weeks after the funeral, at exactly 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Sarah's water broke. She called Dr. Chen, who told her to head to Mercy General Hospital immediately. Sarah called the car service James had arranged. She still hadn't bought a new car, though James kept suggesting it, and rode through the empty city streets with her hospital bag, breathing through early contractions. At the hospital, things moved quickly. Sarah labored for 6 hours, alone in her room, except for nurses and doctors. No husband, no family. Just her, fighting to bring her daughter into the world. Margaret Emily Richardson, named for both her grandmothers, was born at 8:54 a.m., weighing 7 pounds, 2 ounces. small but healthy. Perfect. The nurse placed the baby on Sarah's chest, and Sarah felt something crack open inside her. Not break. Crack open to let light in. This tiny person, with her father's dark hair and her mother's nose, was worth everything. Every humiliation, every moment of fear, every sacrifice to come. "Hello, Margaret," Sarah whispered. "I'm your mother, and I promise you, we're going to be just fine." She stayed in the hospital for 2 days, recovering from the delivery. James visited, bringing flowers and a trust document for Margaret. $100 million set aside for her education, her future, anything she'd ever need. "Your daughter will never struggle the way you did," James said, looking at the sleeping baby with grandfatherly affection. "Your father made sure of that." On the 3rd day, Sarah was discharged. She rode home to her apartment with her newborn daughter, set up the nursery James had arranged, and began the next phase of her life. Marcus never called, never texted, never checked to see if his daughter had been born safely. But Sarah had stopped expecting anything from him. She was focused forward now. Recovery from childbirth took longer than Sarah expected. Dr. Chen had warned her, but experiencing the reality was different. Everything hurt. She was exhausted all the time. Margaret nursed every 2 hours, which meant Sarah never slept more than 90 minutes at a stretch. But there were also moments of pure joy. Margaret's first smile, the way she gripped Sarah's finger with surprising strength, the soft weight of her sleeping on Sarah's chest. In those moments, Marcus didn't matter. The divorce didn't matter. Only this tiny person mattered. At the 2-week postpartum checkup, Dr. Chen cleared Sarah to begin light exercise. Nothing strenuous yet. Walking, gentle yoga. Listen to your body. James had already arranged for a personal trainer, Elena Rodriguez, who specialized in postpartum recovery and had worked with several high-profile clients. Elena came to Sarah's apartment 3 times a week, bringing equipment and creating customized workout plans. "We'll start very slowly," Elena said during their first session. "Right now, we're just rebuilding your core strength. In a few weeks, we'll increase intensity. Your body has been through a trauma. We have to respect that while also pushing toward your goals." Sarah's goal was clear. By the time of Marcus's wedding in 5 weeks, she needed to not look like the broken woman he'd left at the graveside. She needed to look powerful, confident, transformed. Elena designed a nutrition plan, bringing in a chef who prepared meals focused on healing and energy. The food was nothing like Sarah's previous diet of frozen dinners and takeout. Fresh vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats. She felt better within days. The weight started coming off slowly. 5 pounds the first week. 4 the second week. Sarah could see changes in the mirror, her face less puffy, her energy returning. James introduced her to Catherine Zhao, a financial advisor who specialized in managing large estates and helping clients understand their wealth. Catherine arrived at Sarah's apartment in a sharp suit, carrying a leather portfolio. "James tells me you're still adjusting to your new financial reality," Catherine said, settling into Sarah's living room while Margaret slept in her bassinet. "That's completely normal. Most people don't inherit billions. It takes time to understand what you have and how to use it." Over the next 2 weeks, Catherine gave Sarah a crash course in wealth management. They reviewed the real estate portfolio property by property. Catherine explained the investment strategies, the corporate holdings, the trust structures. She helped Sarah understand that the $2.1 billion wasn't just sitting in an account. It was working, growing, generating passive income of approximately $3 million per month. You could never work a day in your life and still have more money than you could spend, Catherine said. But wealth isn't just about money, Sarah. It's about power, position, influence. Your father understood that. He didn't just build financial wealth, he built a network, a structure, leverage points. Like owning Marcus's wedding venue, Sarah said. Catherine's smile was sharp. Exactly like that. Your father was a strategic genius. He positioned you to control the spaces and resources that matter to the people who hurt you. They discussed the foundation, the $50 million her father had allocated for charitable work. Catherine helped Sarah understand how to activate it strategically. If you just quietly donate to shelters, that's nice but invisible, Catherine explained. If you make a $500,000 donation at a high-profile charity luncheon, that's news. That's social positioning. That's how you become visible in the circles where Marcus's family operates. Do you want to stay invisible? Catherine asked during one session. Or do you want them to see what they lost? Sarah thought about Marcus's face at the graveside. His cold dismissal. His certainty that she was nothing, had nothing, would always be nothing. I want them to see, Sarah said. Catherine nodded. Then we need to be strategic about your emergence. Small steps. First, we get you seen at the right charity events. We have your name attached to major donations. We position you on a few key boards. We let the whispers start. Who is Sarah Mitchell? Where did she get the money? We let them speculate. Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah's life transformed in ways she was still struggling to process. She was working out twice a day now, her body responding to the exercise and nutrition. The baby weight was melting off. 15 pounds gone, then 20, then 25. Her face was leaner, her energy higher. James arranged for a personal shopper, Victoria, who brought designer clothes to Sarah's apartment for fittings. Nothing flashy, not yet. But quality pieces that fit perfectly, that made Sarah look polished and professional instead of frazzled and broke. We're building a wardrobe that communicates power without being obvious about it, Victoria explained, holding up a navy cashmere sweater that probably cost more than Sarah's old monthly salary. You want people to notice you, not your clothes. 5 weeks after Margaret's birth, Sarah looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She'd lost 35 pounds. Her face had regained its bone structure. Her eyes were clear and alert instead of exhausted and desperate. The designer clothes fit like they'd been made for her, because they had been. She looked like a different person. She felt like one too. The first public appearance was carefully orchestrated. The Children's Hospital Foundation was holding its annual spring luncheon at the Ritz-Carlton, a major event in the city's charitable calendar. Tables cost $10,000. Major donors attended. The society pages covered it extensively. Catherine secured Sarah a table, then suggested something bigger. What if you're not just attending? Catherine said. What if you're one of the featured donors? A $500,000 contribution would get you on stage, thanking the hospital for their work. It would get your name in the program, in the press. And it happens to be an event that Linda Spencer attends every year. Marcus's mother, Sarah's former mother-in-law, who'd orchestrated the divorce and paid off the mistress. She'll be there? Sarah asked. She's on the planning committee. She'll absolutely be there, and she'll see you. Sarah made the donation. James drew up the check from one of the foundation accounts. The hospital was thrilled. $500,000 was their second largest donation of the year. The luncheon was in 4 days. Sarah had 4 days to prepare for her first step into the world where Marcus's family operated, the world of wealth and power that had always been closed to her. Victoria brought formal options for the luncheon, day dresses in elegant cuts with matching accessories. They settled on a dress in deep emerald green, fitted but not tight, with a modest neckline and three-quarter sleeves. Classic, elegant, expensive without screaming about it. The day of the luncheon, Sarah stood in her bedroom, the dress on, her hair professionally styled in soft waves, her makeup natural but polished. Margaret was with a nanny James had hired, a kind older woman named Rose who'd raised 3 children of her own. Sarah looked at her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked confident, powerful, like someone who belonged in the world of charity luncheons and $500,000 donations. She didn't feel confident. Her heart was hammering. But that was fine. She could fake confidence. She'd been faking it her entire life. The car James had sent, a Mercedes S-Class, sleek and elegant, picked her up at noon. The drive to the Ritz-Carlton took 15 minutes through midday traffic. Sarah practiced breathing, reminding herself of everything Catherine had coached her on. "You don't owe anyone explanations," Catherine had said. "If people ask where the money came from, you smile and say, 'My father's estate.' If they push, you say, 'It's been a difficult few months, but I'm grateful to honor his legacy.' Keep it vague. Keep it dignified." The Ritz-Carlton ballroom was stunning. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, tables dressed in white linens with elaborate floral centerpieces. 300 of the city's wealthiest, most influential people were mingling over champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Sarah checked in at the registration table. The coordinator's eyes widened when she saw the name. "Ms. Richardson, we're so honored you're here. Your donation it's extraordinary. Thank you so much. You're at table 3 right near the stage, and we have you speaking after lunch to present the check." Richardson, not Mitchell. James had suggested using her father's real name, and Sarah had agreed. It was time to reclaim that identity. Table 3 was indeed near the stage, at the front of the room. Sarah made her way there, aware of eyes following her. She didn't recognize anyone yet, but that was fine. She wasn't here to make friends. She took her seat, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a server. The other seats at her table filled slowly. Older couples, a hospital administrator, a local entrepreneur. They introduced themselves with the polite curiosity of people trying to place someone new in their social ecosystem. "Sarah Richardson," she said, shaking hands. "My father recently passed, and I wanted to honor his commitment to children's health care." "Richardson," one of the women said thoughtfully. "That name is familiar. Are you related to the Richardson family? The one from the 90s? "My father was Thomas Richardson," Sarah said calmly. "He preferred privacy, but yes." The woman's eyes widened. Thomas Richardson walked away from an $800 million fortune in 1995. I remember reading about it. He just vanished from society. No one knew what happened to him. "He became my father," Sarah said simply. "He built a quiet life, but he never stopped investing and growing his holdings. When he passed, he left me his estate with instructions to use it for good." It was close enough to the truth, and it positioned Sarah as someone honoring her father's legacy rather than someone seeking attention. The luncheon began. Sarah barely tasted her food, some kind of chicken with asparagus. She was too focused on scanning the room, looking for one particular face. And then she saw her. Linda Spencer was seated 4 tables away, near the back of the ballroom. She was in her late 50s, perfectly coiffed, wearing a St. John knit suit in cream. She was laughing at something the man beside her was saying, her hand on his arm, performing the social grace she'd perfected over decades. Sarah watched her former mother-in-law, this woman who'd paid Danielle Harper $15,000 to help destroy Sarah's marriage, who'd pressured Marcus to divorce his pregnant wife, who'd been so certain that Sarah was beneath their family, that she'd never amount to anything. Linda hadn't noticed Sarah yet, but she would. After lunch, the hospital CEO gave a brief speech thanking everyone for attending and highlighting this year's major donors. When he got to Sarah's name, his voice took on extra warmth. Our second largest donation this year comes from Sarah Richardson, daughter of the late Thomas Richardson. Sarah has contributed $500,000 to our pediatric cancer research program, and she's here today to present the check. Sarah, would you join me on stage? Sarah stood, very aware of the 300 pairs of eyes that swiveled to watch her. She walked to the stage with her head high, her heels clicking on the polished floor, her hand steady as she accepted the oversized ceremonial check from the hospital's development director. The CEO handed her the microphone. Sarah, would you like to say a few words? She hadn't prepared anything. But standing on that stage, holding that microphone, looking out at the sea of wealthy, powerful people who'd never heard of her until this moment, Sarah found the words. My father passed away recently, she said, her voice clear and strong. In his final weeks, he told me that real power isn't about what you have. It's about what you do with it. He built his fortune carefully over 3 decades with one purpose: to protect his family and help others. Today, I'm honored to continue his legacy by supporting the incredible work being done here at Children's Hospital. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Sarah smiled, handed back the microphone, and returned to her table. As she walked, she saw Linda Spencer's face. Her former mother-in-law had gone white, completely white. She was staring at Sarah like she'd seen a ghost, her hand frozen halfway to her mouth, her champagne glass tilting dangerously. Sarah met her eyes for just a moment, a brief, steady gaze that communicated everything. I see you. I know what you did. And this is just the beginning. Then Sarah returned to her seat, accepted congratulations from her table mates, and finished her sparkling water. As the event wound down, Linda Spencer approached Sarah's table. She looked composed now, though her eyes were calculating, trying to piece together this impossible transformation. Sarah? Linda said, her voice carefully neutral. Is that really you? Sarah stood, turning to face her former mother-in-law with a polite smile. Hello, Linda. How nice to see you. I didn't realize you'd be here. Marcus mentioned you'd moved to a shelter after Linda caught herself. After the divorce filing, I assumed you were still struggling. Struggling? Sarah repeated thoughtfully. No, I'm not struggling. My father's estate came through, and I'm honoring his wishes to support causes he cared about. Children's hospitals were important to him. Linda's eyes were scanning Sarah's appearance. The designer dress, the weight loss, the confidence. Trying to reconcile this woman with the broken, pregnant one Marcus had left at the graveside. Your father's estate, Linda said carefully. Marcus never mentioned your father having significant assets. My father valued privacy, Sarah said. He built his wealth quietly over 30 years, and he structured everything to protect me. The prenuptial agreement you insisted on actually worked out perfectly. It means Marcus has no claim to any of my inheritance. So thank you for that. The comment landed like a slap. Linda's polite smile froze. I see, Linda said. And the baby? Did you? My daughter Margaret is 7 weeks old. She's perfect, healthy, happy, already securing her future. My father established a trust for her before he passed. $100 million for her education and future needs. She'll never struggle the way some people hoped she would. Linda's face went through several expressions: shock, calculation, dawning horror. She was putting together pieces, realizing that her plan to destroy Sarah had backfired spectacularly. Marcus should know, Linda began. Marcus chose to leave his pregnant wife at her father's graveside, Sarah said, her voice still polite but with an edge of steel. He chose to drain our bank account, take my car keys, and give me 30 minutes to leave in a snowstorm. He chose to have his mistress mock me while my father was being buried. Those were his choices, Linda. And choices have consequences. You're still angry, Linda said, trying to regain control. That's understandable. But Marcus is happy now. He's getting married in 2 weeks. To a wonderful young woman who... Danielle Harper, Sarah said, 27, junior associate at Mitchell Marketing Solutions. The woman you paid $15,000 3 weeks before my father's funeral. I have the bank records, Linda, the wire transfer, the memo that said wedding assistance. I know exactly what you did. Linda went pale again. I don't know what you think you know, but I know everything, Sarah said simply. And in time, so will everyone else. Enjoy the luncheon, Linda. Thank you again for insisting on that prenuptial agreement. You really did me a favor. Sarah turned away, leaving Linda standing there speechless, and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear whispers already starting. People asking who she was, where the money came from, how Thomas Richardson's daughter had emerged from nowhere with a $500,000 donation. Perfect. Let them talk. Let the rumors spread. Let Marcus's family hear about it and panic. The car was waiting outside. Sarah slid into the back seat, let out a long breath, and allowed herself a small smile. Step 1, complete. News of Sarah's appearance at the luncheon spread faster than she'd anticipated. The society pages ran a piece the next day. Mystery heiress donates $500K to Children's Hospital. There was a photo of Sarah on stage, looking elegant and confident, holding the oversized check. The article mentioned that she was the daughter of Thomas Richardson, the reclusive billionaire who'd walked away from an $800 million fortune in 1995. Speculation ran wild in the comments section. Where had she been all these years? How much had the fortune grown? Why was she emerging now? Catherine called that afternoon, delighted. Perfect execution. You looked amazing, your speech was pitch perfect, and the Linda encounter was chef's kiss. Now everyone knows you exist, and they're dying to know more. What's next? Sarah asked, holding Margaret while the baby dozed against her shoulder. Next, we let them come to you, Catherine said. You'll start getting invitations to other events, board position offers, meeting requests. You accept selectively. Say yes to the most visible, most prestigious options. We build your presence gradually. By the time Marcus's wedding rolls around next weekend, you'll be a recognizable figure in circles he desperately wants to impress. The invitations started arriving within days. Could Sarah attend the Arts Council Gala? Would she be interested in joining the Women's Business Association board? The Museum of Modern Art was having a fundraiser. Would she like a VIP table? Sarah accepted strategically, guided by Catherine's advice. She appeared at a gallery opening in a black cocktail dress, chatting easily with other patrons. She attended a women in business luncheon, where she was seated next to the mayor's wife. Each appearance generated more whispers, more speculation. The weight continued to drop. 40 pounds gone now. Sarah was back to her pre-pregnancy weight and beyond, her body lean and strong from Elena's training regimen. She looked better than she had in years, maybe better than she ever had. Victoria brought in a new wardrobe for these public appearances. Evening gowns, cocktail dresses, designer suits, jewelry that was real, not costume, diamond studs, a strand of pearls that had belonged to Sarah's grandmother, pieces that caught light and communicated wealth without screaming about it. 8 weeks after her father's funeral, Sarah attended the Metro Arts Gala at the Four Seasons. It was the social event of the spring season. 500 guests, black tie mandatory, media coverage extensive. Catherine had secured Sarah a VIP table near the front, along with a $250,000 contribution to the Arts Foundation. Sarah arrived in a midnight blue couture gown, fitted perfectly to her transformed figure. Her hair was swept up in an elegant chignon. Real diamonds hung from her ears, 2 carats each. She looked like she'd been born to this world. Like the past 8 weeks of struggle and transformation had never happened. The ballroom was magnificent. The mayor was there, several state senators, CEOs of major corporations, celebrities and philanthropists mingling under crystal chandeliers. This was the apex of the city's power structure, and Sarah was walking into it alone. Catherine met her at the entrance, stunning in a red dress. "You look perfect. Confidence is key tonight. You belong here more than most of these people. Your father's fortune is older and larger than probably 80% of the money in this room. Own that." Sarah took a breath and walked into the ballroom. People noticed. How could they not? She was beautiful, confident, and new. A fresh face in a social scene where everyone knew everyone. Within minutes, introductions were happening. The Arts Foundation director rushed over to thank her for the donation. A state senator wanted to discuss a non-profit initiative. 3 society wives invited her to lunch. Sarah smiled, chatted, accepted business cards. She was playing a role, the gracious heiress honoring her father's legacy. But with each interaction, the role felt more natural. And then, across the room, she saw him, Marcus. He was in a tuxedo, looking handsome and confident, his arm around Danielle Harper. Danielle was wearing white, a bold choice for a mistress, with too much jewelry and a laugh that carried across the room. They were at a table with Marcus's parents and what looked like colleagues from his firm. Marcus hadn't seen Sarah yet. He was laughing at something Danielle said, his hand on her waist, looking like a man without a care in the world. His wedding was in 6 days. By all appearances, he'd gotten away with everything. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't approach. Not yet. She let Catherine guide her to their VIP table, where she was introduced to a local news anchor, a tech CEO, and a foundation director. High-profile people. Connected people. The kind of people Marcus desperately networked with, but rarely got FaceTime with. Halfway through dinner, Sarah saw Linda Spencer notice her. Marcus's mother was seated with her family, and her eyes had been scanning the room, probably sizing up the competition, evaluating who'd worn what, who was sitting where. When her gaze landed on Sarah at the VIP table, Linda's fork clattered against her plate. Sarah saw Linda lean over to whisper urgently to Marcus. Saw Marcus's head turn, scanning the room. Saw the exact moment his eyes found her. His face went through a fascinating progression of emotions. Confusion. Who is that woman? Recognition? Wait, is that? Shock, that can't be Sarah. Denial, that's not possible. Sarah held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned away, smiling at something the tech CEO was saying, as if Marcus didn't exist. At her table, the conversation turned to business and philanthropy. Sarah mentioned her father's foundation, the $50 million allocated for women's shelters and children's hospitals. The foundation director was immediately interested. Could they partner on some initiatives? Sarah agreed, exchanging contact information. She could feel Marcus's eyes on her throughout dinner, feel his confusion, his growing panic. She didn't look at him again. After dinner, there was dancing. The news anchor asked Sarah to dance, and she accepted, letting him lead her onto the floor. She was peripherally aware of Marcus trying to navigate closer, trying to manufacture an encounter. But Sarah and her dance partner were quickly joined by the tech CEO cutting in. Then, a state senator's son, Sarah danced with powerful men, laughed at their jokes, collected business cards and lunch invitations. She was sparkling, vivacious, the belle of the ball. Finally, as she was returning to her table, Marcus intercepted her. "Sarah." His voice was strained. She turned to face him slowly, her expression politely curious, as if he were a stranger approaching at a party. "Hello, Marcus." What are you doing here?" The question came out more desperate than demanding. "I'm attending the gala," Sarah said calmly. "I made a contribution to the Arts Foundation. They invited me." "You made a contribution?" Marcus was staring at her, at the transformation, trying to reconcile this elegant woman with the pregnant, crying one he'd left at the graveside. Where did you get the money?" "My father's estate came through," Sarah said, her voice pleasant and neutral. "It was larger than anyone expected. I've been honoring his wishes to support causes he cared about." "Your father was a bookkeeper." "My father was Thomas Richardson," Sarah said, watching understanding dawn in Marcus's eyes. "The Richardson who walked away from an $800 million fortune in 1995. He never stopped investing. His estate is valued at just over $2 billion. Marcus actually stumbled backward. $2 billion? That's not possible. I would have known. We were married. You would have. The prenuptial agreement your mother insisted on was very thorough, Sarah said. Everything was kept separate. And my father structured his assets in ways that protected them completely. You never had any claim to his holdings, Marcus. Not while we were married, and certainly not after you served me divorce papers at his graveside. Sarah, I didn't know. If I had known, you would have what?" Sarah's voice remained calm, but steel crept in underneath. "Not drained our bank account? Not served me papers at my father's grave? Not sent your mistress to mock me? You made your choices based on who you thought I was, powerless, worthless, someone you could discard without consequences. Those choices revealed exactly who you are." Marcus's face was pale. "I was wrong. I made a mistake. Sarah, please, can we talk somewhere private?" "There's nothing to discuss," Sarah said. "You wanted a divorce. I'm happy to give you one. My attorney will be in touch with the final paperwork. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have people waiting." She turned to walk away. Marcus grabbed her arm. "Wait, Sarah, please. The baby, our daughter. I haven't met her yet. I have rights. I want to." Sarah looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. Her voice dropped to a temperature that could freeze nitrogen. "You had the right to meet your daughter the day she was born. You chose not to. You chose to never call, never check, never ask if we survived. You chose Danielle and her fake pregnancy and your expensive wedding over your actual child. Those choices have consequences, Marcus. Now remove your hand from my arm before I have security escort you out." Marcus dropped his hand like she'd burned him. Sarah walked away without looking back, rejoining Catherine at their table. "Perfect," Catherine whispered. "He looks like he's about to have a heart attack." Sarah risked one glance back. Marcus was standing where she'd left him, looking lost. Danielle was approaching him, concern on her face, probably wondering why her fiancé looked like his world was collapsing. Linda was watching from their table, her face ashen. The rumor mill would work overtime tonight. Everyone had seen Marcus and Sarah talking. Everyone would be speculating about the connection, about Sarah's fortune, about the timing. And Marcus's wedding was in 6 days. Perfect timing. The next morning, Sarah woke to 17 missed calls, 12 from Marcus, 3 from Linda, 2 from unknown numbers that were probably reporters. She ignored all of them. Instead, she focused on Margaret, who was now 9 weeks old and becoming more alert every day. Sarah held her daughter, looked into those bright eyes, and felt her resolve strengthen. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, about showing her daughter that women don't have to accept cruelty, that there are consequences for betrayal. James called at 10. Marcus has been trying to reach me all morning, his mother too. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? The divorce terms. They're suddenly very interested in making sure the settlement is fair to you. James's voice was dry. I told them we'd consider their proposals after we complete our own investigation into the asset division and Marcus's conduct during the marriage. Which gives us until after the wedding, James confirmed. They can't do anything without your signature, and you're under no obligation to respond quickly. The legal system moves slowly. We can make it move even slower if we need to. Good. That afternoon, Victoria arrived with options for Marcus's wedding. Catherine told me you're actually attending. Is that still the plan? It is. Then we need something special. Something that makes a statement without being obvious about it. You're not there to cause a scene. You're there to watch justice unfold. They settled on a dress in rich burgundy silk, with a fitted bodice and a flowing skirt, elegant but not flashy, paired with simple diamond studs and a bracelet that had belonged to Sarah's grandmother. Her hair would be worn down in loose waves, makeup natural but polished. You'll look beautiful, Victoria said, and more importantly, you'll look powerful, like someone who's already won. The week passed in a strange blur. Sarah attended a hospital board meeting. She'd accepted a position on the Children's Hospital Board at their urgent request after her donation. She met with her private investigator, reviewing the evidence he'd gathered. She spent time with Margaret, soaking up every moment with her daughter. And she prepared mentally for what was coming. The night before the wedding, Sarah read through her father's journal one more time, finding comfort in his words. The best revenge isn't emotional, he'd written. It's showing them the truth at the perfect moment. You don't need to yell. You don't need to cry. You just need to present the facts and let them speak. Sarah closed the journal and looked at Margaret, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow, Marcus and Danielle would face the consequences of their choices. Tomorrow, Linda would learn that some betrayals come with a price tag. And Sarah would make sure the lesson was delivered with maximum impact. The day of Marcus and Danielle's wedding dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for a disaster. Sarah took her time getting ready. Elena came over for a final check-in, making sure Sarah felt strong and confident. Victoria helped with the dress and accessories. Catherine stopped by to review the plan one more time. You walk in, you take your seat, you watch the ceremony, Catherine said. When they get to the objections part, if they include it, that's when James will stand. He'll have the legal authority to present the information. You don't have to do anything except exist. What if they don't include that part? Catherine smiled. They will. Danielle insisted on a traditional ceremony. She wants the fairy tale. She'll get it, just not the ending she imagined. At 3 p.m., Sarah's car arrived. The wedding started at 4. The Riverside Plaza was a 20-minute drive across the city, the venue Sarah now owned, though Marcus still didn't know that. Sarah sat in the back of the Mercedes, Margaret's baby monitor on her phone showing Rose caring for her daughter back at the apartment. She was wearing the burgundy silk dress, her hair in soft waves, her makeup perfect. She looked beautiful, powerful, exactly like someone who'd already won. The Riverside Plaza was stunning, all glass and steel and modern elegance, with a ballroom that overlooked the river. White flowers covered every surface, A champagne fountain bubbled in the corner. 200 guests milled around, dressed in their finest, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Sarah checked in at the guest list table. The coordinator's eyes widened when she saw the name. Ms. Richardson. Yes, you're on the list. Table 7 near the back. The ceremony will start in 15 minutes. Sarah took her seat at table 7. She was sharing the table with some of Marcus's colleagues from the firm, people who vaguely recognized her but couldn't quite place her. Perfect. She wanted to be visible but not central. She wanted to watch. At 4:05, the guests were asked to take their seats. The string quartet began playing. Marcus walked to the front of the aisle, standing beneath an arch covered in white roses. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, confident, like a man about to get everything he wanted. He hadn't seen Sarah yet. He was scanning the front rows, looking for his parents, not paying attention to the back of the room. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in blush pink dresses. Then came Danielle. She looked beautiful, Sarah had to admit. Her white dress was stunning, probably the $3,000 one she'd insisted on. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like a bride from a magazine, radiant and triumphant. Marcus watched her approach with tears in his eyes. Real emotion. He probably did love her, in whatever shallow way he was capable of love. Danielle reached the altar. The officiant, a friend of Marcus's family, began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. The traditional words washed over Sarah. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, watching. Several people at her table were whispering, recognizing her now, confused about why Marcus's ex-wife was at his wedding. Let them whisper. The ceremony proceeded. Vows were exchanged. Marcus and Danielle promised to love each other, to honor each other, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer. The irony of those words hung in the air. Then came the moment Catherine had anticipated. If anyone here has reason why these two should not be wed, the officiant said, speak now, or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause. Most couples skip this part now. But Danielle had wanted it, had insisted on it. Because in her fairy tale, this was the moment that confirmed no one could stop their love. James Morrison stood up. He was seated in the middle of the room, and his rising was impossible to miss. 6 feet tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, radiating authority. Every head turned. I'm afraid I must object, James said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. On behalf of my client, Sarah Richardson, there are several legal matters that must be resolved before this marriage can proceed. The room erupted in whispers. Marcus's face went white. Danielle spun around, her bouquet nearly falling from her hands. Who are you? The officiant asked, confused. James Morrison, attorney at law. I represent Ms. Sarah Richardson, who is currently still legally married to the groom. The divorce petition was filed but never finalized. More importantly, there are significant legal claims against both parties that need to be addressed before any new marriage is entered into. I signed papers, Marcus said, his voice shaking. She signed the divorce papers. Actually, she didn't, James said calmly. She never signed anything. You served papers at her father's graveside, but she was under no obligation to respond on your timeline. And given the evidence that's come to light regarding your conduct, Ms. Richardson has been consulting with legal counsel about how to proceed. Danielle grabbed Marcus's arm. What is he talking about? You said the divorce was final. I assumed, Marcus was scanning the room now, finally spotting Sarah at table 7. Their eyes met across the distance. His expression was pure panic. Hers was calm, steady, unflinching. James continued, seemingly unaware of the chaos he was causing. There's also the matter of the $18,000 stolen from the joint marital account, the illegal eviction of a pregnant woman, and the coordination between Mr. Spencer and Ms. Harper to deliberately end the marriage while Ms. Richardson was at her most vulnerable. We have extensive documentation, bank records, text messages, email correspondence. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. Would you like me to present this evidence to the guests, or would you prefer to handle this in a more private setting? Private, Marcus almost shouted. This is a private matter. This is our wedding day. Your wedding day to a woman you've been having an affair with for 10 months while your wife was pregnant with your child? James said, his tone still conversational, but cutting. I think privacy went out the window when you served divorce papers at a graveside, don't you? Danielle was looking at Marcus now, her perfect makeup starting to run as tears formed. 10 months? Marcus, you said it started recently. You said you only fell for me after your marriage was already over. It was over, Marcus insisted, but his voice was weak. The timing. The timing was that you started the affair the same week your wife told you she was pregnant, James said. He was addressing the whole room now, his voice carrying to every corner. Ms. Richardson found out she was expecting. Mr. Spencer was informed, and within 3 days, he began a sexual relationship with Ms. Harper. Is that correct, Mr. Spencer? Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. The truth was written all over his face. What is happening? Danielle demanded, her voice rising. Marcus, tell me this isn't true. But Sarah could see the calculation in Danielle's eyes. She was putting pieces together, realizing that Marcus wasn't the man she thought he'd married, that maybe she'd been played too. James pulled out more documents. There's also the matter of the financial fraud. Ms. Harper, did you or did you not tell Mr. Spencer that you were pregnant with his child? Danielle's face went white. That's not... Who told you that? We have text messages, James said calmly, between you and your friend Jessica, dated 4 months ago. The messages read, and I quote, "The pregnancy is fake. It's my insurance policy. He'll never leave me if he thinks I'm having his baby." The ballroom erupted. Guests were standing now, phones out, recording everything. Marcus staggered backward, staring at Danielle in horror. "You're not pregnant?" he asked, his voice breaking. "You lied to me?" "I was going to tell you," Danielle said desperately. "After the wedding, I was going to say I lost the baby. But by then we'd be married and you'd have trapped him," James finished. "Financial fraud, coercion, intentional misrepresentation to induce marriage. That's grounds for annulment, by the way, and potentially criminal charges." Danielle's mascara was running in black rivers down her face now. Her perfect makeup was ruined. Her perfect day was ruined. She dropped her bouquet and ran, toward the exit, her white dress billowing behind her. Several guests tried to stop her, but she pushed past them and disappeared through the doors. Marcus stood at the altar, abandoned by his bride, facing 200 shocked guests. His parents were in the front row, Linda's face buried in her hands, his father looking 10 years older. "There's one more thing," James said, and the room quieted again. Ms. Harper wasn't working alone. We have evidence that Linda Spencer, the groom's mother, transferred $15,000 to Ms. Harper 3 weeks before Thomas Richardson's funeral. The memo on the wire transfer reads, "Wedding assistance." Mrs. Spencer was aware of the affair and actively financed it, then encouraged her son to divorce his pregnant wife at the worst possible moment. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a coordinated family effort. Linda Spencer stood up, her face red with fury and shame. "That's a lie. Those records are private." Bank records are discoverable in litigation, James said mildly, and Miss Richardson is well within her rights to sue both you and your son for emotional damages, not to mention the criminal complaints that could be filed. Criminal? Marcus found his voice. What criminal complaints? Theft of marital assets? Illegal eviction? Financial coercion? The list is quite extensive. And given that your wife is a multi-billionaire with considerable legal resources, I imagine the district attorney would be very interested in pursuing charges. The words multi-billionaire echoed through the ballroom. People were on their phones now, Googling Sarah's name, finding articles about her father, about the Richardson fortune, about her recent charitable donations. The whispers grew louder. James looked around the room, then pulled out one final document. Oh, and one last detail that seems relevant. The Riverside Plaza, where we're currently standing, it's owned by Richardson Properties, LLC. Which means, technically, Ms. Richardson is your landlord today, Mr. Spencer. She's graciously chosen not to cancel your event. But she did want me to inform you that the $35,000 venue fee will be donated to the women's shelter that took her in when you made her homeless. The same shelter where she stayed for 2 days with your newborn daughter before her father's estate was settled. That detail broke through Marcus's shock. His head snapped up, searching the room again until he found Sarah. She met his gaze steadily, her face calm, her posture relaxed. She looked like she was watching a mildly interesting play, not the destruction of her ex-husband's life. Sarah owns this place? Marcus whispered, loud enough to be heard. She owns a great many things, James said, including 40% of Mitchell Marketing Solutions, your employer, or rather, your former employer. The majority shareholders were informed this morning of the evidence of your conduct, and they've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately. Something about moral turpitude and damaging the firm's reputation. Marcus swayed like he might fall over. His best man reached out to steady him, but Marcus shrugged him off. You can't do this, Marcus said, but his voice was hollow. You can't just destroy my life. Sarah stood up then. She'd been sitting quietly through James's entire presentation, but now she rose, and every eye in the room locked onto her. She walked down the aisle slowly, her burgundy dress flowing around her, her heels clicking on the polished floor. She looked like power incarnate. She stopped 10 feet from Marcus, close enough to speak directly to him, but far enough to maintain distance. You destroyed your own life, Sarah said, her voice carrying through the silent ballroom. I didn't drain our bank account. I didn't serve divorce papers at a graveside. I didn't mock a pregnant woman and kick her out into a snowstorm. I didn't lie about a pregnancy. I didn't coordinate with my mother to pay off a mistress. Those were all your choices, Marcus. You chose cruelty. You chose betrayal. You chose to humiliate me at my most vulnerable moment. I'm sorry, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face now. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about your father's money. I thought you thought I was nothing, Sarah finished. Someone you could discard without consequences. And that's the problem, Marcus. You only valued me when you thought I might have worth. When you thought I was broken and poor, you treated me like garbage. Now that you know I have money, suddenly you're sorry. But I don't want your apology. I don't need it. She pulled a document from her small clutch, the divorce papers Marcus had served her, still unsigned. She held them up for everyone to see. These papers? I'm signing them. Right now. I want this divorce. I want nothing more to do with you. But I want you to understand something first. Sarah moved closer, her voice dropping so only the people nearby could hear clearly. but microphones from the wedding videographer were catching every word. "I could have destroyed you privately," she said. "I have the resources to make your life miserable in ways you can't even imagine. I could sue you into bankruptcy. I could press criminal charges. I could make sure you never work again, never recover your reputation, never have the life you wanted." Marcus nodded desperately. "Please don't. Sarah, please." "But I'm not going to do that," Sarah said. "Do you know why?" Marcus shook his head, confused. "Because you're not worth the effort," Sarah said simply. "You're not worth my time, my energy, my attention. You're nothing, Marcus. You always were, and now everyone knows it." She turned to James, who handed her a pen. Sarah signed the divorce papers right there, on the altar where Marcus was supposed to marry Danielle. Her signature was firm and clear. "There," she said, handing the papers back to James. "File these on Monday. The marriage is over. He can move on with his life." She turned to address the crowd then, her voice rising to fill the ballroom. "Thank you all for attending today. I know this wasn't the celebration you expected, but I wanted you all to witness the truth. Marcus Spencer betrayed his pregnant wife at her father's funeral. He stole her money. He kicked her out. He let his mistress mock her, and his mother paid to make it happen." Sarah pointed to Linda, who was still standing, her face a mask of horror. Linda Spencer transferred $15,000 to finance this affair and this wedding. She pressured her son to abandon his pregnant wife. She orchestrated cruelty because she thought I was beneath your family. Linda tried to speak, but Sarah cut her off. "I'm not beneath anyone," Sarah said. "I'm the daughter of Thomas Richardson. My family fortune is $2.1 billion. I own properties across 6 states. I control companies, including significant shares in the firm that just fired your son. I have resources you can't imagine and a team of lawyers who are very good at their jobs." She paused, letting that sink in. "But I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for justice. I'm here to show my daughter that when people hurt you, you don't have to stay silent. You show them the truth and let them face the consequences of their actions." Sarah walked back down the aisle toward the exit. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. When she reached the doors, she turned back one more time. "Oh, and Marcus? That $35,000 venue fee? It's going to the Harbor Women's Shelter, the same place that took me in when your cruelty made me homeless. They saved my life. Now I'm saving others. That's what real power looks like." She walked out of the Riverside Plaza, leaving chaos behind her. The last thing she heard as the doors closed was the eruption of voices. 200 guests, all talking at once, phones out, recording everything, spreading the story that would be all over social media within the hour. Sarah's car was waiting. She got in, took a deep breath, and looked at her phone. A message from Rose. "Margaret is perfect. Sleeping peacefully. How did it go?" Sarah smiled and typed back, "It went exactly as planned. I'm coming home." The fallout from Marcus and Danielle's wedding spread faster than any wildfire. By that evening, the story was trending on social media. Riverside Plaza Wedding was the top hashtag in the city, with dozens of videos uploaded by guests who'd recorded the entire confrontation. News outlets picked it up. Local first, then regional, then national. "Billionaire heiress crashes ex-husband's wedding and owns the venue," ran one headline. "Wedding canceled after affair, fake pregnancy, and family conspiracy exposed," ran another. The details came out quickly. Marcus's cruelty at the graveside, the drained bank account, the coordinated family betrayal, Danielle's fake pregnancy. Public opinion was swift and brutal. Marcus became unemployable overnight. Mitchell Marketing Solutions not only fired him, but released a statement condemning his conduct. No other firm would touch him. He became toxic in professional circles. His personal life fared no better. Danielle disappeared, deleted her social media, moved out of the apartment they'd shared, reportedly fled to another state. Friends distanced themselves. The society circles where Marcus had networked actively excluded him. Linda and Robert Spencer faced their own consequences. Country club memberships were quietly terminated. Board positions were not renewed. Business partners found reasons to end relationships. The Spencer family went from respected to pariah in less than a week. Marcus tried to reach Sarah 17 times that first week. Voicemails, text messages, emails. All went unanswered. He'd lost access to the Manhattan apartment. He'd lost his car when he couldn't make payments. By the end of the second week, he was living in a cheap studio, $50,000 in debt from the canceled wedding, with no income prospects. But Sarah wasn't paying attention to Marcus's descent. She was focused forward on building the life her father had wanted for her. The foundation became her primary project. The $50 million her father had allocated was just the beginning. Sarah added another $100 million of her own money, creating programs that would help women in crisis, shelter funding, legal aid, job training, child care assistance. She named it the Thomas Richardson Foundation for Women's Empowerment. The mission was clear: help women who'd been betrayed, abused, or left powerless rebuild their lives with dignity and resources. The first recipients were the staff and clients at Harbor Women's Shelter, where Sarah had stayed. She endowed their operating budget for the next 20 years, $10 million. She funded renovations to make the space more comfortable and welcoming. She created programs to help residents transition to independence. Catherine helped Sarah build a media narrative around the foundation. Sarah gave carefully selected interviews, telling her story, not for revenge, but to show other women they weren't alone. I was 8 months pregnant, standing at my father's graveside, when my husband handed me divorce papers. Sarah told a reporter from Women's Business Journal. His mistress was there. His mother had paid for it all. They took my money, my car, my phone. They gave me 30 minutes to leave. I thought I had nothing. The interview was powerful because Sarah wasn't bitter. She was matter-of-fact, calm, focused on helping others rather than dwelling on her pain. Then I found my father's letter, she continued, and I learned I had everything I needed to not just survive, but to rebuild my life on my own terms. That's what I want other women to know. You are stronger than you think, and there are resources available. Sometimes you just need someone to believe in you and give you the tools to fight back. The interview went viral. Women reached out by the thousands, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival. The foundation received donations from people who wanted to be part of the movement. Within 3 months, the endowment had grown to $200 million. Sarah also focused on her role as Margaret's mother. That was always the priority: coming home to her daughter, holding her, playing with her, being present for every milestone. Margaret smiled for the first time at 10 weeks, rolled over at 14 weeks. Each moment was precious. Sarah hired a small but dedicated staff to help manage her life. Rose the nanny, Elena the trainer, a personal assistant named Julia who coordinated schedules and handled logistics. But Sarah did the important things herself: bedtime stories, morning cuddles, midnight feedings. 4 months after the wedding, Sarah's transformation was complete. She'd lost 53 pounds total, returning to a weight she hadn't seen since college. But more than that, she'd gained confidence, purpose, power. She sat on 3 major boards. She was regularly featured in business publications. She was becoming known as a philanthropist and advocate for women's rights. The divorce was finalized quietly. Marcus had nothing to contest. The prenup ensured he had no claim to Sarah's inheritance, and given his conduct, he knew better than to fight for custody or visitation. He signed away his parental rights to Margaret in exchange for Sarah not pursuing criminal charges. "Are you sure you want to let him off that easily?" James had asked when reviewing the settlement. "I'm not letting him off easily," Sarah said, looking at Margaret playing on her floor mat. "I'm freeing us from him. He has no rights to my daughter, no claim on our lives. That's worth more than seeing him in jail." The settlement was signed. Marcus became a legal stranger to his own child. Sarah legally changed Margaret's last name to Richardson, erasing the Spencer connection entirely. 6 months after her father's death, Sarah stood in the study of her new home, a penthouse she'd purchased in the city's most exclusive building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views. The space was elegant but comfortable, filled with photos of Margaret, her father, and her mother. On her desk was her father's journal, worn now from how many times she'd read it. Next to it was a new journal, Sarah's own, where she was documenting her journey for Margaret to read one day. She wrote, "My darling Margaret, today you took your first steps. 4 steps from the couch to my arms, your face lit up with pride and surprise. I cried happy tears, the kind I didn't know I could feel 6 months ago. Your father, the man who contributed DNA, but nothing else, doesn't know about this milestone. He'll never know about any of your milestones, and I've made peace with that. I used to think his betrayal broke me, but I was wrong. It revealed me. It showed me strength I didn't know I had. It connected me to resources my father had built precisely for this moment. You'll read this someday and wonder why I didn't just take his money and disappear quietly. Why I went to that wedding. Why I exposed everything so publicly. The answer is simple. I wanted you to see that women don't have to accept cruelty silently. That betrayal has consequences. That being kind doesn't mean being weak. Your grandfather, my father, spent 30 years building a fortune to protect us. He was patient. He was strategic. He believed in showing people the truth at the perfect moment, not out of cruelty but out of necessity. I hope you never need the lessons he taught me. I hope you marry someone who deserves you, who stands by you through hard times, who would never dream of abandoning you when you're vulnerable. But if you do need these lessons, they're here. This journal, your grandfather's journal, the foundation, the resources, everything built to ensure Richardson women don't break. We wait, we watch, and we win. I love you more than words can express. You are my greatest joy, my proudest accomplishment, my reason for everything. Mom. Sarah closed the journal and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Marcus was living in a studio apartment, unemployed, alone. His mother was a social pariah. Danielle had vanished. Justice had been served. But Sarah rarely thought about them anymore. She was too busy building a life worth living, running the foundation, raising Margaret, planning for the future. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Board meeting confirmed for Tuesday. Also, Mayor's office wants to discuss the new Women's Center proposal. You're changing the world, Sarah. Sarah smiled. The Thomas Richardson Foundation had just announced plans to build a comprehensive women's center. Shelter, legal aid, child care, job training, and medical care all under one roof. The city was donating land. Corporate sponsors were lining up. It would be the largest facility of its kind in the region. Margaret babbled from her playpen, holding up a stuffed bear triumphantly. Sarah scooped her up, breathing in her baby scent, feeling her solid weight. Your grandpa would be so proud of you, Sarah whispered to her daughter. He built all this so we'd never feel powerless again, so we could help other women find their strength. Margaret grabbed Sarah's hair and tugged, giggling. Sarah laughed, kissing her daughter's forehead. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. The penthouse was warm and safe. Margaret was healthy and happy. The foundation was changing lives. Sarah had everything that mattered, not because of what Marcus lost, but because of what her father had given her. Not just money, but the wisdom to use power strategically, the patience to wait for the right moment, and the understanding that real strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing enemies down. That night, after Margaret was asleep in her nursery, Sarah returned to the window. She thought about that cold February day at the cemetery, standing at her father's grave, broken and pregnant and terrified. That woman felt like a stranger now, a past version of herself that Sarah could barely recognize. She'd survived the worst moment of her life and emerged transformed, not with bitterness, but with purpose. Not seeking revenge, but delivering justice. Not broken, but rebuilt into someone stronger than she'd ever imagined possible. And in the reflection of the window, Sarah could almost see her father's face, proud and smiling, watching over his daughter and granddaughter with the satisfaction of a man who'd planned well and protected fiercely. "Thank you, Dad," Sarah whispered to the glass, "for everything, for seeing this coming, for preparing me, for teaching me that patience is the greatest weapon, for showing me what a Richardson woman can do." The city lights blurred slightly as tears formed, but Sarah was smiling. These weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of triumph, of hard-won peace. She'd been tested by betrayal at her most vulnerable moment, and she'd passed that test with grace, strategy, and unshakable resolve. The Richardson women didn't break. They waited, they watched, and they won. Sarah's victory wasn't Marcus's destruction. It was her own resurrection, her own transformation, her own future, built on her father's legacy and dedicated to her daughter's security. That was power. That was justice. That was enough. As Margaret stirred in the nursery, making the small sounds that meant she'd be hungry soon, Sarah moved away from the window. She had a daughter to feed, a life to live, a legacy to build. The past was behind her. Marcus, Danielle, Linda. They were footnotes in a story that was really about Sarah finding her strength. And the best part? The story was just beginning.